Hi. More and more people these days are interested in incorporating more whole grains into their diets. And what better way than through delicious home-baked goods? But if you're attempting to bake a loaf of bread using 100% whole wheat flour, the trick is baking a loaf that won't just end up making a great doorstop. The bread I'm going to bake today is from King Arthur's Whole Grain Baking. They describe it like this. It's 100% whole wheat sandwich bread. Tender, moist, and light, yet close-grained. This is the holy grail of 100% whole wheat breads. This is a loaf you'll find yourself making over and over again for sandwiches, toast, French toast, and bread pudding. Anytime you want a bread with the texture of typical white sandwich loaf and the dark, weedy color and added fiber and nutrition of whole wheat. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And what's more, for not being a no-knead recipe, it's pretty easy. This recipe makes a single pan loaf. You could easily double the recipe, but I'm going to stick with the single loaf quantities. And the recipe calls for combining all the ingredients and mixing and kneading until you have a soft, smooth dough. We need just 3 cups of whole wheat flour. I happen to use white whole wheat. You see this more and more at the grocery store. King Arthur sells it along with their other flours. Now, I buy 25-pound bags of organic white whole wheat berries through a local food co-op, and then I just mill it myself. White whole wheat has all the nutrition of traditional red wheat, but it's lighter colored and milder tasting. Some parents like it because it's easier to sneak lighter colored bread past their health food adverse kids. Then to the 3 cups of flour, I'm going to add 1 cup of lukewarm water and 2 tablespoons of orange juice. This addition of orange juice is an interesting feature of this recipe and many of King Arthur's whole wheat bread recipes. They found that the orange juice tempers what some perceive as the somewhat bitter flavor of whole wheat, and you won't taste the orange flavor at all in the finished loaf. This is an optional step, and normally I would skip it since I'm using the milder white whole wheat flour, but I'm going to use it here just out of curiosity. Then I'm going to add a half a stick of unsalted butter cut up into pieces, and 3 tablespoons of sugar, a half a cup of either potato, a half a cup of potato flakes or 3 tablespoons of potato flour, and I'm using the potato flour, a 1/4 cup of non-fat dry milk, 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, and 2 1/2 teaspoons of instant yeast. It's interesting that this is 10 times the amount of yeast called for in the no-knead recipe, and I suppose part of this is because we're not taking 18 hours for the proofing, and partly because it takes a lot more yeast to keep our 100% whole wheat bread from actually becoming a doorstop. And then I'm just going to mix and knead it until I get that soft, smooth dough that they recommend. Okay, I've been mixing it for about probably 3 minutes, and my arm is starting to feel the effects of the resistance of the dough. So if you want to make this easy, I would suggest just doing the whole thing inside a mixer, like a KitchenAid mixer. And then the recipe says to just cover it and let it rest for 1 to 2 hours until it's doubled in bulk. So I'm going to set my timer for 1 hour, because it's the only way I can keep track of time. And check then, and then I'll give it more time if it needs it. Okay, it's been almost 2 hours since we mixed up the dough. It's taken that long for it to almost double in size because it's a pretty cool day today. So now we have 2 options, and one of them is to just gently deflate the dough and shape it into a log and place it in the pan for the final rise. But I'm going to take option number 2, which is a little bit more fun. What I'm going to do is take about 1/3 of this. Is that about 1/3? And shape this into a log. You know what? I'm going to need to flour the surface a little. Trying to remember to be gentle with it. And then take the remaining, the third that you cut off, and probably flouring it too much, and cut that into thirds. And then make a long kind of rope out of the 3 balls. And then what you're going to do is braid the ropes together and put it across the top of the log, and it just makes a more decorative loaf. I've only done this once before, and it turned out pretty nicely. And it's an opportunity to sharpen up on your braiding skills, which is a valuable skill to have. How does this go? Yeah, that's it. And then what you do is you take your braid and put it over the loaf. So we tuck the ends of this braid over the ends of the loaf and place the whole thing in the pan for the final rise. And that's supposed to take about, what does it say, 1 1/4 to 2.5 hours. And then you're supposed to cover this with a lightly greased piece of plastic. Okay, so we'll let this rise for a couple hours, and then it'll be ready to bake. Okay, much to my surprise, it only took about an hour for the bread to rise to its full height. As you can probably see, it is about 1.5 inches above the rim of the pan. So I've got the oven preheating, and when it gets to 350 degrees, we'll put it in for the suggested 35-minute bake time. Okay, so we'll put it in the oven. And now it's going to bake for 35 minutes, but after 15 minutes, we're going to tent it with aluminum foil. So I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. Okay, it's been 15 minutes, so now we'll tent it with this tin foil, or aluminum foil. And that leaves 20 more minutes of bake time. Okay, the instructions say that it's done when it's golden brown and an instant read thermometer reads 190 degrees on the inside. So it looks definitely golden brown. Now let's see if it's 190 degrees on the inside. The funny thing is, an instant read thermometer is not instant. It takes about 30 seconds or so for it to reach its equilibrium. 189.5. 190. It's done. Yippee! So now we set it out for a minute to cool. About a minute or so after you've taken it out of the oven, you can turn it onto the rack to cool all the way. You should give it at least 30 minutes to cool according to the directions. And they also say that if you want it to be a little softer, you can brush it with melted butter. But when I made it last time, it was plenty soft, so I'm just going to leave it. And now for the always much anticipated slicing and eating of the bread. Well, this came out better than my last attempt. It's a tight grain like they say it is, but this one's a little bit more fluffy, I'd say. This is really good bread. It's very much different than the no-knead bread recipes, but it's great in its own right. It tastes a little like orange juice. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't taste like orange juice at all. But for being 100% whole wheat, it's also incredibly light. So this is great. It's easy to make. You can make it all in the same day, and I will definitely make it again.